So, at long last, the Orville has returned. And it's nice to see Star Trek again. So, it returns on Hulu, and I only signed up for this show, and I'll see what else Hulu's got to offer, but you know, Orville was the deal. And it's the third season, otherwise known as New Horizons. New Horizons. That's what they're calling it. So, the first episode basically reintroduces you to the cast, and they have a new cast member, and they introduce her through them dealing with the aftermath of the Kalon War, and of course this all centers on Isaac, and it's perfectly understandable why people wouldn't want to be in the same room with him, because how do you know? How does he even know? There might be some program waiting to manifest itself, and his eyes turn red, and it's over, you know. And you have Dr. Finn's kids deal with this, and then she has to deal with it because of her own feelings, because she had romantic feelings for Isaac. But she did, and they do it very honestly, and it becomes rapidly apparent that this episode is not a comedy. There's the silly characters in it, and they're funny, you know, and just in their own personalities and whatnot. But the entire episode is very somber. They're all people who dealt with loss, and there's this problem here with Isaac, who seems to be functioning okay, and of course on his own level appears to be completely oblivious to all this hatred for him. But they have to deal with it, and they deal with it in this episode, you know, rather tragically at first, seemingly. And then, but it's one of these things that I'm sure they'll carry on throughout the season of having to deal with this, and there's always going to be some doubt, even though he did save them from that. So, but boy, there's a lot of even though it's kind of a slow show, there's a lot of cool scenes and stuff. It opens up, it's a dream sequence, but there's a lot of action in it. And then they demonstrate they got a new, I guess, a fighter they bring on board, and it just looks like a really small Orville ship, but it's a fighter. But they test it, they do stuff like that, and they eventually take off, and that's when some action takes place, and how they have to deal with this. And there's a lot of good scenes of it. It's one of these things that I am still a bit baffled by with the Kenobi series, on some scenes looking good and some scenes looking very, very cheap. There's no cheapness in this. You know, and I have to hand it to Strange New Worlds. There's, at least for the production value and the presence and scenes of their shots, it's all pretty good. It's there's no flaws in it, other than that that's not the Enterprise. It's alternate universe Enterprise or whatever, you know. But so it's odd. I don't know what's going on there over at Kenobi Land, but something's up. But anyway, with Orville, it's all really good, and it's just Seth MacFarlane should have been handed the reins of Star Trek. I mean, they'd be in a much better place. And I mean, I'll always wonder, he didn't get it, but somebody just as good or maybe better got it, and Star Trek was back, and it was this cool thing, and there were all these cool innovative episodes coming out of it, and all this sort of stuff. And then he tries his hand at Orville and says, well, it's going to be this parody of it. And okay, but it's clear he didn't want to make a Star Trek comedy. He wanted to make a Star Trek show. And this one has pretty much come full circle, as you know, and I just assumed, for the purposes of being able to do a show that's pretty much Star Trek, that you think, oh, well, it's a comedy. See, it's like parody, so you can get away with it. But not in this episode. This episode had a lot of sadness to it, and just dealing with emotions after something like the Kalon War happens, and that sort of thing. So it's a very good return. I ran a little long, I thought, for this, but at the same time, the performances are all good. It's all credible unto itself, and they're to a good start, as this is the episode that reintroduces you to Orville. And I hope people tune in, sign up to get, because I would like to see more. It won me over with the other seasons, and it's all you're gonna get as far as a good romp sci-fi show. And even with the comedy, I hope he doesn't take it out completely, because he's pretty good at it. And I'm sure they won't, because the characters are pretty quirky, and certain situations are bound to arise. But it's also the thing that they were kind of the misfit crew that could, and then they basically saved the Union from the Kalons with Isaac, of course. But they did it, and so that puts them in a new level, that they're not quite the misfits anymore, and they're very a ship to be reckoned with. So good to have it back. I don't want to spoil everything. I just kind of went through moods and stuff, and the basic idea of what they're dealing with in the aftermath of the war and all that. So they have a new character, and she's introduced in this and plays a pivotal part in detailing this reaction and or response to Isaac, and so on and so forth. So, and it's one of those things you just got to deal with. And and they had to the Orville stays in dry dock, or whatever I guess you would call it. It's in outer space or whatever, for a while. And that makes sense. I mean, they had to do refits and repairs and stuff because it'd been through the war. It's kind of odd, like with Strange New Worlds, they had the battle with the Gorn, and the Enterprise, it took a serious beating, and it was in bad shape. And they are docked at the space station in the next follow-up episode, but they're not repairing it or anything. The crew's going on shore leave, but they don't really deal with it. At least could have mentioned it or something and said, well, it's been a month or whatever, it looks like repairs are coming along. And no. But here, Orville, starting off after the Orville has now been refurbished and ready to go back into action for a new season of Orville. So it's good, and I'm expecting great things from it, and I hope it gains new life, and that people tune in and reward good work of something like Orville. And you see any Orville merch, a t-shirt, an action figure, or whatever, it certainly would help to pick up some of those too. So, well, let's see what the next episode brings.